But to Lockheed on the ground and the people at Thiokol, many, many people were not surprised that failed. But it was this top-down craziness from Reagan looking for publicity and a momentary blip in his popularity talking to the teacher that caused the whole thing.
That's astounding.
I'm writing a book called Disasters, Arrogance, and Greed, talking about many, many instances in the technology world, including Fukushima, where people do really stupid things, where one person could have stood up and said, we know that that's not going to work. For the Fukushima plant was built 50 feet below where the previous tsunami had hit. That is, on the hillside in Japan where the power plant was, there were stone markers from the previous tsunami that said, don't build below this stone. And there are villages all along the hill above the stone. But it would be expensive, or it's much more convenient to build the power plant at sea level. So they did that even though there was unambiguous, clear evidence that the previous tsunami 100 years ago was 50 feet higher than the power plant. That was not a surprise to anybody.
Total madness.
That's right. It happens all the time, I'm sorry to say.
You describe remote viewing in Do You See What I See as an ability we all have to a greater or lesser degree that lets us describe and experience activities or events blocked from ordinary perception by distance and time.
I couldn't have put it better myself.
And you constantly reaffirm that we are all capable of being remote viewers.
Well, that's my experience. And some of what we say is theory. The fact that we all have psychic ability is my lifetime experience teaching remote viewing. And that remote viewing is this ability we have to quiet our minds and look into the distance in the future. And I'm sure that's an evolutionary trait that we had in caveman periods, so you'd know if a tiger crawls into your cave and is going to eat you. It would be nice to know that before he springs and bites you. And people have that ability, particularly for emotional material. But it's like a musical ability in that anybody can learn to play the piano a little bit, even if they don't have any talent. But if you don't have talent, no matter how much you practice, it won't get you to Carnegie Hall. Since retiring from Lockheed, I've been teaching remote viewing all over the world. I wrote Do You See What I See? And people finally realize how old I am. And my idea is that as a result of writing that book, I got a ton of invitations to teach, which is what I was doing. And what I find is that in a workshop, I have 30 or 40 people, everybody will either do something psychic or see something psychic working with a partner. So that in well-conducted experiments where you're asking people to describe little objects hidden in a bag or describe a picture that I'm about to show you, people have no problem doing that. I set the stage, say I'm about to put something in your hand, describe what that feels like, the texture, the shape, the weight, the color, and people can do that very, very well. So my life experience is that people are able to describe what they're going to see. They can either do that or learn to do that swiftly.
Do you think, as a long-standing legendary remote viewer and teacher, that the discovery of non-locality is one of the greatest revelations that a person will eventually experience when they're learning remote viewing on an experiential level, not just to know it as knowledge? And could you explain it to the audience?
Well, non-locality is an idea that Schrödinger, the great physicist who perfected quantum mechanics in the 30s, talked about non-locality and entanglement. It's the idea in physics that particles born together remain attached to one another like identical twins. There's great legendary experiments where one twin gets sick and the other one gets sick, or both twins show up for an interview wearing exactly the same thing, even though they haven't seen one another for many years. The twins born together remain entangled. Similarly, photons that are born together in the same experiment can become entangled so that even though they're traveling away from one another at the speed of light, if you grab one of them and measure its polarization, then that affects the other photon. Einstein did not like that idea because he thought that it violated special relativity, sending a message faster than the speed of light. It appears that this phenomena works quite well, but you can't use it for message sending. So although psychic abilities and ESP in general is a message-sending opportunity, the explanation is that we live in a world that is non-local. The Buddhists have said for thousands of years that separation is an illusion for consciousness. So we live in a non-local world, that is a world where certain things are independent of space and time. In the ESP arena, for example, one of the things we know is that it's no harder to describe a target object or picture across the world. That's no harder than describing the picture on the table in front of you. Similarly, it's no harder to describe the thing that I'm going to show you tomorrow than it is the thing I'm going to show you today. So describing the future is just as easy as describing the present time. And because psychic functioning has accuracy and reliability that's independent of space and time, we would say that psychic ability is non-local. It's non-local because you can experience things outside of your house, outside of your environment, and it's easy to describe things in the future and in the distance. So that's what we mean by ESP being non-local. In the physics community, things are non-local because the measurement of one particle affects the polarization or behavior of another particle. That physics entanglement is not the explanation for ESP, which many people erroneously claim. The fact that we live in a non-local space-time, non-locality describes the nature of the space-time in which we live. It's a property of the universe. The universe is non-local. And the non-locality of the universe, the interconnection entanglement that exists in the universe, is what allows ESP to work and the entanglement in physics. But the physics entanglement is not the cause of ESP. They're both the result of the nature of the space-time in which we live that permits a variety of unexpected entangled phenomena, including entangled identical twin people and identical twin particles and experiments in the laboratory. Henry Stapp, who is chairman of the physics department at the University of California, Berkeley, said the discovery of non-locality may be the most important discovery in all of science.
It's certainly one of the most exciting, isn't it?
Because it's the first physical demonstration that indeed separation is an illusion in many cases.
How do you experience the whole concept of free will if, in fact, through remote viewing and associative remote viewing, we can bypass our present timeline, go back into the past, and go into the future and gather data?
Now, free will is a tough question for several reasons. First of all, it would be hard to prove that you have free will. For a variety of reasons, it would be very complicated to demonstrate that you described something freely rather than have it be the effect of something else. But I understand your question. Let's say I've given you 3 dishes of ice cream, strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate, and you like all of them. It's a hot day. You've got these 3 dishes of ice cream, and I say, Kim, I want you to relax and freely choose whichever dish of ice cream you want. Just relax and just choose whatever strikes you at the moment. Meanwhile, yesterday in the laboratory, I would have described this experiment to a psychic and said, Kim is going to be sitting in front of these 3 bowls of ice cream. Can you close your eyes here on Tuesday and tell me what you see her choosing on Wednesday? What is she going to choose? And my psychic on Tuesday will have no problem describing what you freely choose on Wednesday. So you might feel that that interferes with your free will.
Actually, I don't, not in the way you described it. But then my question is, does it really exist then?
She knows what you're going to freely choose. the fact that a person can have information about